In 2020, I learned four languages at the same time using this technique that I'm about to show you. In 2020, I moved to Berlin in Germany to work in the Spanish embassy in the Handelsabteilung, the economic and commercial department of the embassy. Uh, and a lot of interesting things happened in 2020, as you probably remember. But one of the main things for me was adapting to a big city, right? I come from a small village and to a new place, new coworkers, all of that. And what I noticed is that all of my coworkers spoke Spanish. They were all Spaniards, except the secretary, who was German but had been working there for since the since East Germany existed, so for a long time. So yeah, so she spoke Spanish with everyone as well. So my whole social life there was with my coworkers in Spanish, and then their social life was also like hanging out with your colleagues after work as well. So also in Spanish, and after my just right after my first weekend, I was already like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to just live in Berlin in a Spanish bubble. I refuse to do that. So I started looking for events and started looking for things to do. I ended up meeting a bunch of people, really good friends there. But this was before that, and I didn't know anyone. So I started looking for whatever. Where can I meet people? And one thing I found was this German Italian language exchange. It was every Sunday in a cafe. I was like, I've got nothing better to do on Sundays. I might as well go. My German's decent. I don't speak Italian. I can improve my German, and I can meet people and learn some Italian. Shouldn't be difficult because Italian is very similar to Spanish, and I should learn it relatively easy. So I was wrong because once I showed up, I realized that yeah, I could understand quite a lot actually, but I couldn't say a word. Um, but there, I met a bunch of interesting people, and this guy Giorgio I talked to, and I was like, "So you're here to learn German?" And I was like, he looked at me like, "What?" And I was like, "No, I'm here to meet the girls." Okay, okay, well, fair enough. Um, but I didn't talk to that guy again. I think because he just didn't want to talk to me. But uh, there was another guy, another Italian, his friend, who was actually learning German, and he was making an effort, and he was constantly taking notes. And I asked him like, "What are you doing there?" And he told me that he was writing down all the words that he didn't know, all the words that he wasn't able to say in uh, in conversation. He could speak some German, but his vocabulary was limited. His everything was limited, all right. But uh, especially like there were lots of words that he didn't know. So every time he struggled to say something, he'd write down all the words in Italian and then look them up to him. And he had a long list of words, like Italian on one side and then German on the other side. And then he'd put them into Anki flashcards and review them. And that way, in a few months, he had built a pretty nice vocab because like, you look up the words you need but you don't know, and then you add them um, to your Anki deck, and you keep learning them. And yeah, he was improving pretty fast. But my idea when I saw that, I thought that was a pretty good idea. But then I thought maybe I can improve it. And what if instead of words, what if what if I do complete sentences? And then I came up with this. So basically, what I did was when I got home, because Italian and Spanish are like maybe 80% or 75% similar. Like grammar and most of vocab are pretty similar. So I could understand quite a lot what they spoke, but just couldn't say anything. And I wasn't able to say anything for a while. But when I started doing this, I simply started writing down everything I wanted to say in those weekly meetings there, those meetups, and I write it down in English and then translate it into Italian. I started then started just reviewing those sentences that I wanted to be able to say, and then next Sunday I tried to use them in conversation, and in just 1 week I was able to say way more. Like, well, I went from zero to being able to say quite a lot. And a week after, I was able to speak even more. And I kept doing that, and eventually, I was able to have full-on conversations relatively fluently. I also listen to a lot of podcasts, so that's I got used to Italian in general. But preparing the lines and then using them and then writing more lines, and so every week I'd use all the previous lines, or at least the ones I needed in that specific conversation, and then also I'd prepare more. I'd get more ideas and prepare more lines for next week. So eventually, I had enough to be able to have nice conversations in those meetups. So it was pretty good. And the thing is that I was living in East Berlin, that's where there used to be the communist part, and my neighbors were from Ukraine, from Russia, from Moldova. Ukrainians and Russians were getting along a little bit better than now then, because again this was pre 2022. Um, but yeah, there was even a Russian supermarket there. There's a lot of Russian being spoken and Romanian being spoken there. And because I'm so into languages, I started talking to them. And I already had this list of sentences I was preparing for Italian. So I thought, what if I just translate them and start learning them for those languages as well? So, and my German wasn't all that good then either, even if I had officially passed a C1 exam. But uh, you know what? Passing exams, like that's why I don't like the A1, A2, all that stuff. I'm really not a fan of that because I know Spanish people with B2, C1 certificates in C1 even certificates in English that can't have a basic conversation, and then people who wouldn't pass even a B1 or uh, A2 exam because they don't know anything about grammar and they're bad at writing, but they're just not like studious, but they do well in conversation because they focus on learning to speak. So, um, where was I going with this? Yeah, I had passed a C1 test to get to the embassy job, but I still had a lot to improve. I even now I still have some improvements I could do. You could always improve, right? But my German could be improved a lot then, and I was living in Berlin, so I even applied this to German. So I was doing exactly like using the exact same sentences translated for Italian, for German, for Romanian, and for Russian, and it worked really, really well. And this is the list of sentences. I've got thousands. You can see, well, these are sentences I prepared later on. Right? It's not the original list. I've been updating it over and over again with more and more stuff. But basically, the main topics tend to be yourself, your work, all your hobbies, your place of origin, your plans, different stories, things you've done, things you want to do, family and friends as well, or talking about people if you're really into gossiping. Not that much into gossiping. Basically, you put them in different categories and you write everything you want to be able to say, and then you learn it. So here are the sentences. I lived in Germany. I also lived in Austria. I worked in Romania, and then these are the like, am locuit in diferite țări, am locuit in Germania. Uh, lots of lots of sentences translated into all the target languages, like all the languages you want to learn. This is particularly useful if you want to learn more than one language, right? And once you've got everything written, and you should always update your list and add more and more stuff because there'll be things that you didn't think of that then maybe you need. So next time you go back to the list, you add more things. But you basically translate it into all the target languages, into your target language or all the target languages, and you've got a bilingual text, your own bilingual text. And this is much more effective than any learning materials you'll find uh, in any corner of the internet, or in books or anywhere, because it's your own lines, and each one of those lines you wrote it. It's there because you thought it was useful. Maybe you write something that's not very useful, but most of it will be really useful to learn. And so once you've got them, you start learning them. Around 1,000 lines are enough to get good at conversation once you've learned them well. And to learn them well, basically, you need to. And I didn't do this then because text to speech either wasn't a thing or I wasn't aware of it when I originally did this with four languages. But nowadays you can use something like TTS Maker or similar, and you paste this there. You create audio files, and you got audio files and text, bilingual text of everything you want to be able to say. And then the only thing to do is to just listen while reading. You listen to it. Probabil că am vizitat peste 30 and maybe you don't do it in the beginning, but once you've done it a few times, listening while reading, then you can also sub-vocalize. You start saying it while you are reading and listening simultaneously. Every time you don't understand something, you just check the meaning, and you read while listening over and over again until you understand everything easily. And if you listen to the audio files during the day while you do something else, like working out, you can get several dozen rounds of listening to the whole thing very quickly, because 1,000 sentences are more or less an hour of audio. So in 30 hours, you can listen to your 1,000 lines 30 times. And that's going to be more than enough to remember them well. And then you just learn them actively. You start shadowing, so you listen and say them at the same time. You try to say it with the same cadence, and I know it's text to speech, so it's not going to be super, like, really the way a native speaker would say it, like, really really natural. No, maybe not, but it's way better than just doing whatever, right? It's way better than doing Duolingo, at least. So you shadow them, so you read while listening and you say it aloud. Eventually you can do it without listening. And finally, and this is a really good exercise, you should translate. This is retrieval practice, extremely powerful exercise. So once difficult and frustrating and tough, but once you've done enough reps of listening and reading, and you understand the sentences relatively well, you can do it. You can do retrieval practice, which is looking at the sentences that you wrote and trying to say them in the target language, and then you check. And then the next one, and then you try to say it. You travel a lot how to say that, and then okay, got it right, got it wrong, and this thinking in the language and trying to say a complete sentence and then getting instant feedback. If you do this with all of your sentences from start to finish, the whole list, like 2 or 3 times, your ability to think in the language and to form sentences and to speak will improve really fast. And also, you will get rid of a lot of the mistakes that you might have made otherwise, because you're constantly getting feedback. And it helps you think in complete sentences, right? So instead of just trying to, when you learn in a language and you have to think a lot to form a sentence, this exercise will help you improve at that, because you constantly thinking, forcing yourself to think in the language and speaking complete sentences, so that those gaps between words, when you are which countries have you lived in, uh, uh, yeah, that goes away, because well, it will, those gaps will get smaller and smaller, because you're constantly having to do it. Again, it's difficult, but it will eventually make you fluent. So this is how I did it. This is how I learned four languages in. Well, I already spoke one of them, but I improved a lot. And the other three, I went from zero to conversational relatively fluent in a year. All three at the same time, while I improved the first one. So yeah, this is something that if you're really into languages, or even if you want to learn just one language, you should do this. All right. This is the best way to learn to speak any language, and fast.